Hi guys, my name is Kirsty and welcome back to Upside Down Books. Today we're going to be doing the exciting task of looking at my favorite books in 2020.
Non più tra I farfalloni amoroso, notte giorno di
To be fair, maybe there'll be some books from the end of the year that'll make this list, so we're just going to go from now, which is like the first week of December-ish, and we're going to look back at the year and all the amazing books that I have really enjoyed. I am really excited about the sheer number of books that I have absolutely loved this year. I feel like I've had a really good run of books that have made my all-time favorite list, so these are not only 5-star reads, these are the books in 2020 that made my all-time favorites list. Let's go. The first book that made this list this year was a real surprise, and that was The Pearl Thief by Fiona McIntosh. Since I have read this, I have realized I need more Fiona McIntosh in my life, and I'm actually currently reading her latest release, The Champagne Wars, and really loving it. I just find the way that this woman writes historical fiction is incredible, and I know that she's also got some fantasy books out there that are really well rated too, so I can't wait to get around to those. This was such an amazing World War II / like 20 years later sort of story, and I can't recommend it enough if you are a historical fiction fan. The next book that ticked my box was Verity by Colleen Hoover. Colleen Hoover never fails to impress me. As you'll know, I've got my Colleen Hoover challenge coming out in 2021, and Verity was amazing. This was such a chilling, haunting, and incredible page turner. It was fantastic. So if you're looking for something a little bit spooky, a little bit mind trippy, I can't recommend this one enough. The next book was actually in the non-fiction category, and it was a self-help book, and that was Buy Yourself the Effing Lilies by Tara Schuster. I really enjoyed this. I thought that this was really inspirational. I read this at a point where I think I really needed it, and I found all the messages in this book just something great to take on and help yourself get motivated and get happy. It was really good. The next book that I found blew my mind was the audiobook version of Sleeping Giants by Sylvain Neuvel. I have since read more of this series, the sequel, and also really enjoyed that. In fact, Waking Gods also made my all-time favorites list, so let's talk about that now as well. But this series is something else, and I cannot recommend enough that you pick up the audiobook version if you can, because the way that it is narrated with a full cast of narrators is really exciting. The next book that I just really enjoyed was Hunted by Megan Spooner. This is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. It is the first book by Megan Spooner that I have read, and I am so excited to read more of her retellings because she's doing more fairy tale retellings, but I thought this was just a really nice and a little bit of a different take on the classic fairy tale, and it was such a breeze to get through and read. I just thought that this was a really good YA fantasy page turner. The next book was a little bit different to anything else I have ever read before, and that was A Boy and His Dog at the End of the World by C.A. Fletcher. This book I haven't heard a lot of people talking about. It's a relatively new book, and it is really something else. This is a dystopian, and it is about a boy and his dog. It is about the end of the world. I think the title really says it all, but it is the way that it is written in a sort of written narrative that you're reading almost potentially post the events. You're just reading the account. Is really gripping, and the twists and turns that happen in this book are spectacularly well done and some of the best plot twists I have ever read. The next book was my favorite book for the year, hands down, and that was The Pull of the Stars by Emma Donoghue. This surprised me. I wasn't expecting to fall in love with this as much as I did, but I read it in 2 days. I just couldn't put this down. This takes place over the space of about 3 days on a maternity ward in 1917 Dublin, Ireland. I'm pretty sure it's Dublin, somewhere in Ireland, and that is at the height of the Spanish flu. So this is looking at pregnant women at the end of their pregnancies who also are suffering from the flu. It's really graphic, it's really fast, it's really intense. It's a little bit gory, but it is one hell of a spectacular read, and I cannot recommend it enough. This book is unreal, and you can consider me Donoghue's #1 newest fan. Like, I need to go and buy the rest of her books, clearly. The next book was one that I was amazed at how fast I managed to get through it, and that was Homegoing by Yaa Gyasi. This is a historical fiction book that I thought I might get a little bit bogged down in, but I actually read this in about 24 hours, which is unreal. This book is such a great book to read this year with the Black Lives Matter movement really taking off. It is a great look at how slavery from 200 years ago could still very much so impact people's lives today in quite a real way. It is following the timeline of two sisters and their descendants. One is married to a slave trader and one is a slave, and it looks at how this impacts their lineage going forwards. It is an incredible story and one that you definitely need to pick up. The next book that I read and I really enjoyed despite some controversy around it was A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. There have been various accusations about this book which I feel are relatively ill-founded if you actually read the book yourself. This is just incredible. It is about a magic school. It is dark, it is grungy, it has fantastic representation. It has people from all over the world in it. I thoroughly enjoyed it, especially the Australian representation, and I just found it so good. The main character is wonderfully snarky and spiky and doesn't really have any friends, but for good reasons when you get into the book. This is such an entertaining read, and I guarantee you, you will not be able to put it down. And that brings me to my final read of 2020 that has made my all-time favorites list, and that was The Beautiful by Renee Ahdieh. This one also really surprised me because whilst I had heard amazing things, Renee Ahdieh has been a bit of a hit or miss author for me. I really loved the Wrath and the Dawn series, but I DNF'd the Flame and the Mist series. I didn't like that at all, so I was really curious how I was going to go with vampires, considering vampires are not really vogue right now, but this was incredible. I still stand by my opinion when I do my review of this, that this is how vampires should be written. There was just nothing that wasn't enjoyable in this story. So these are some of the fantastic books that I got around to reading this year. I'd love to know if you've read any of these yourself, or if they're on your TBR, but other than that, I will see you in my next video. Goodbye.
Alla gloria mia